Hello everybody, I'm Katie Burtwell from the Walpole Historical Commission.
And I'm Betsy Dyer from the Walpole Historical Society.
When we began to plan for Walpole 300, we decided to ask Walpole seniors their memories about living in our town. We taped the interviews, and now it's time for everyone to see them. Walpole Media will publicize the names of each person along with the dates each interview will be shown.
The history of a small town like Walpole is not just about the big mill owners and politicians like the Byrds and the Lewises and the Plimptons. It's really all about who was living there, working there, going to school, how they were part of this community and living their everyday lives. I think historians of Walpole 100 years from now will be grateful to come across these transcripts or tapes because these are part of the real Walpole history they'll be interested in. And I think you're going to enjoy these. Maybe you know the person that's being interviewed, but perhaps you just enjoy a good story, and there are lots of good stories here.
So sit back and learn about Walpole history from those who live it. This is Stories of Historic Walpole. Can you tell me your name and how many years you've lived in Walpole?
Joanne Ciannavei, and I've lived in Walpole. Will be 60 years in November.
Okay. And your family is quite a prominent one in Walpole. There's a lot of industry and associations with Kendall.
Right.
And could you tell us about that?
Well, my husband's father worked at Kendall, and some of his other relatives, his aunt, one of his aunts worked at Kendall. She was a secretary, I think. And some of them, you know, had other jobs like at the post office and things like that. So, and they had businesses in town also. So there were, you know, quite a few of them. There were 9 children in that family. And something that's kind of unique nowadays is they all lived in town. I mean, nowadays everybody moves away, it seems, but they all stayed in Walpole. And I thought that was kind of unique.
And where did they live?
One lived on Hanson Avenue. One lived on Norfolk Street, on Main Street. The house next door to the original Silvey house, Mimi Silvey, the youngest brother, he had a house built next door, and he also owned Mimi's variety store for a lot of years.
Which is still there.
Yes, yeah. But.
And you had mentioned that T.D. was a member of your family too.
Yes, T.D. Silvey. He owned T.D.'s restaurant along with one of his sisters, and she did some of the cooking there, and some other family members cooked there. They didn't really have a chef that came in to cook. It was all done by family and stuff. And they had that restaurant for quite a while. And well, you've heard the story of T.D. when he got killed. It was practically right in front of his sister's house.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, T.D. and his girlfriend and Dr. Camilio and his wife were coming home. They had been out for dinner, and they were coming home, and a car came down Washington Street, and I guess, I don't know whether there was 1 or 2 young men in the cars, but one of them had just got out of prison, and they smashed into the car and killed 3 out of 4 people. So that was quite a traumatic thing. So there, you know, having a big family, there's a lot going on, but yet there's a lot of tragedy too. And one of the brother-in-laws that drove a postal truck, he got killed when his truck wouldn't start, and his brother-in-law came behind him with another truck and gave him a little push to get him going. And those trucks are top heavy, so it flipped over, and his door on that side was open, and he fell out, and the truck fell on top of him and killed him. So that was quite an experience, and the brother-in-law felt so bad. I mean, you know, it was hard for him to live with that kind of a thing.
I can imagine.
You know, so.
You had mentioned that you started dating your husband when you were 15.
Yes.
And could you tell us about your impressions of Walpole and how you became acquainted with the town?
Well, when he was living in Roslindale at the time, but you know, sometimes on dates we would come out this way, and he had friends out here, and we'd meet up with some of his friends, and you know, have an evening. And then you know, he was a couple of years ahead of me in school, so by the time he graduated from high school, and then he had 4 years of college, then he had 2 years in the service, so it was quite a long while before we got married. And so it all worked out. Yeah, we were married for 43.5 years when he passed.
He was a great contributor to the recording of history in town. Do you want to tell us about it and what you've done since?
Oh God, he would work until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on doing things for the Historical Society and stuff. And he was one of the authors of this book. And he, you know, I did go to the Walpole Historical Society, and I was on the committee for a while, but I didn't know that much about Walpole. I mean, you know, I moved here and just what I saw. So it was a little bit on the difficult side, trying to decide how much of this stuff I knew and what I didn't know. But I used to go with him. We'd go visit little cemeteries around Walpole. There's a cemetery on West Street with a few stones up there, and we'd go up there and he'd be doing things. And the one next door to the family home there on the corner of Kendall Street, and he'd take rubbings off of stones and stuff like that. So he kept himself quite amused when he retired from Harvard. He also worked at Harvard, and he was there for maybe over 30 years after he graduated and stuff.
And I understand he did a lot of the IT work for Harvard, and that would have been early on pretty much, wouldn't it?
Yeah. He was into the computer end of that too. That was all just starting to come together when he first started. So I wished he was around now so I could work on the computer with him, but you know, it was a lot of fun. I don't know what else you want me to say.
Well, I'm thinking of things that, you know, happened around town, celebrations and parades, church events, even, you know, big snowstorms or big rainstorms.
Yes.
Anything you want to talk about would be wonderful.
Blizzard of '78.
Oh, tell me about it.
We were really confined for what, over a week, but he had a Toyota Land Cruiser, and my brother-in-law, who lives on the corner of Burrell and Main Street up here, he worked for a supermarket down in Rhode Island. So he had to get to work because they had to open up the supermarket, you know, so people could get in there to shop. So my husband got permission to drive all the way down to the Rhode Island border with him and drop him off, and somebody from Rhode Island on a snowmobile met them and took my brother-in-law to work, because you weren't supposed to be driving at that time. But with that Land Cruiser, he could get around very easily. So,
did you have any prior notice of the big storm, or?
Well, the night before, he was working at Harvard at the time, and my oldest son was going to New England School of Art and Design in Boston, and he would ride in with my husband, and he'd pick him up. And I thought, oh God, they'll never get home tonight, because 128 was just at a standstill. But my husband took all the back roads home, and they were only 15 minutes later than normal.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh, so you had them home with you?
Yes, so we were all home.
So what was it like in Walpole that week? Could you go to the grocery store? Could you get milk?
Well, you could until it all ran out, because they weren't getting deliveries and stuff, I don't think, every day like normal, because, you know, 128, nobody could drive on 128 because all the cars were stuck there.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had enough food, thank God, and you know, we managed, but we were stuck at home. And I mean, people were just walking around the neighborhoods looking around, and my husband was out taking pictures and stuff, and I don't know where all those pictures would be. I mean, there were boxes of slides and stuff down in the basement, and my kids are going to have a ball getting rid of all of this.
Going through them all.
This stuff. So maybe at that point, when they take over, the Historical Society can get a lot more of those pictures and stuff. I know he probably, you know, got rid of some of them there, but it's been so many. You know, he loved taking pictures. He had more cameras and stuff like that.
And what were your interests? You know, we talked about him. How about you?
My interests? Well, when the kids, I have 2 sons, and when they were in school, I'd had little part-time jobs. Mm-hmm. I worked for the school system for a while, and that was good because I had holidays off and school vacations and stuff like that, and I was always home before they got home. I worked making pizzas at Papagino's for a while. And then I worked in Boston too. In later years, I worked in Boston for Pendleton Company, and then I finally retired, and then I took up quilting. So I made maybe about 30 quilts. I just stopped recently because I have arthritis in my hands, and it's kind of hard working on quilts when your hands don't work right. But I have quite a collection of quilts. I've made quilts for all my family and my grandchildren and stuff. They all have quilts. And
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're going to be family treasures.
Yeah.
Now, you were telling me earlier that when T.D. passed away, his mother made a gift to Blessed Sacrament?
Yes, the chimes, I guess you'd call them chimes, that the church has. They play them usually around noontime. I haven't heard them in a while, but that's because my hearing is going. But she did. She donated that in memory of him.
And you mentioned that your family was also connected with the Sylvies, and you had a picture in that book that you wanted to tell us about.
Yes, it's my husband's grandfather worked at Kendall Company in the boiler room, and this is the picture, and that's his grandfather, and that was his brother.
So both of those are Sylvies.
Yeah, and then this was a Ciannavei. And in later years, he had a grocery store downtown.
What was the name of it?
Joe's Market.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and Mary Ciannavei, who you know from the Historical Society, that was her father. So maybe when you see Mary at a meeting, you can ask her about that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Were there any times of year in Walpole that you liked more than others? Like, did you enjoy holidays in Walpole or summers, or what was your favorite time of year?
Well, summer is my favorite time of year. Well, we did have a lot of holiday parties. We had one with the whole family and extended families at Christmas time. We rented a hall, and we'd all bring, you know, potluck and stuff like that, and with all the kids, and we'd have somebody that would be Santa Claus, and you know, had a family get together like that. We did that for a lot of years. Then, of course, you know, everybody started dying off, and then people started moving out of town. The younger generation started moving away, where the older generations stayed in Walpole. So.
Did you ever hear of any recollections that your relatives had about Kendall, about working at Kendall?
Well, he had an aunt. I think she worked as like a secretary.
And what was his name?
Her. It was.
Yes, but her brother. What was his name?
Well, Mila. That was the one that worked as a secretary, I think.
Okay.
And then she had. Did any of her other brothers work for Kendall? I know her father did.
Okay, her father, that was the one I meant to say.
Yeah, was Giacomo. I don't think any of her brothers, no, because some worked at the post office and some had businesses in town. I don't know what T.D. did, basically. He was kind of a fun guy. He was not married, and you know, he could come and go and do what he wanted.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if he worked at Kendall's or not. Never got into that.
Do you remember by any chance when the center of town flooded? I think it was 1955.
I can remember Guy and I taking a ride up, because we were both living in Roslindale at the time. And we came up in the downtown, right at Main Street and 27 there. That was all flooded. There was a coffee shop, Dom's Coffee Shop was in that corner too. And that was all flooded. And the bridge on that goes under the railroad, over the railroad tracks, that was all flooded also. Yeah.
Yeah, and Kendall was extensively flooded too.
Right, yes, because the river goes underneath there, yeah.
That's right.
Right.
Are there any other recollections about living in Walpole that you'd like to share with us?
Well, the town has grown a lot. I mean, it was a lot more rural when I first came to Walpole. We moved back to Walpole in 1961. And I live on North Street, and it was a quiet street. Now it's almost as busy as Main Street, because it's a cut through to 109, and plus there were a lot less houses up there then, and all these little side streets that have come in, there's so many more houses. I mean, it was very rural back then. So nowadays I don't even leave my front door open anymore, because the noise is so bad between morning and night, because the cars going back and forth, back and forth. But it was a nice quiet town back then. But like everything else, it's expanded, and we're not the only ones.
Yeah.
All the towns around have gotten a lot bigger and stuff. I'm very disappointed in all of these apartments and stuff that the town had to put up. I mean, they've done it in other towns too.
Yes.
So.
Yes, absolutely. Well, anything else you want to share with us?
Not that I can think of. I think I hit most of it.
Well, I thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having me.
And
I think it's nice what you're doing to, you know, support the town and to have something for 300 years.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.